My newest blog, Slots everybody, covers how to use slots in Vue, Angular, HTML web component spec, and briefly covers how React is different. Because most of my work history was in React, I was thinking with props. But now I'm in Vue, this is a Vue app above me, and I need to figure out how to use slots. They allow you to create enhancing wrappers rather than standalone locked in components. So here is my component example above me. We have a default slot and we have a named slot, which we named with the attribute name and then gave it the name description. Just so that we know where it is on the page, I have put a border around these slots. And within my app that I created for Knitworthy and have mostly commented out at this point, just for this example, we have our slot example component. So if I pass no information to either of these slots, because I don't have anything inside my slot example call in my parent component, then I expect that this slot will not mount anything at all. And this slot will mount my default description. This is my default description. Let's see if I'm correct. Here we are. We've got my purple border, and this is my default description. So what happens if we pass some default content? We don't say it's for the description slot. We just go ahead and dump it in this slot example call. So maybe I'll put, an H1 with "this is my example!" exclamation point. See what loads. We've got "this is my example" and still this is my default description. You don't even have to know what's being passed. It'll just pass it and put it on the page for you. But what if I also wanted to add my description? Well, in that case, I could go ahead and use a template with my slot name. So I add my template tag, I put what I want in my description. Let's say I would like to put, this is such a great description. I love it. Another exclamation point. And then to my template, I will add description. So we'll go ahead and save. And then look at that. "This is my description" has been replaced. And just for readability, I could also wrap my default content in a template, put my content in there, and then give this template the name default. Same thing. The other thing that Vue has done, when they saw the web components spec and said yes and gave us all of those features and more, is allowed you to pass data from your child component through the slot to what you're passing. So if I add to my component a script setup tag and put some data in there, let's say const message equals "this is my message," another exclamation point. Let's start with default slot. So if I'm just using a default slot and I want to pass message, I use my colon so that this will pass the message variable instead of a static string that's message. I save that. I go back here, and within my p tag, I can add slot props.message. On my component, I use the vslot attribute to create slot props. This is my message. And we can take this syntax a lot further. First of all, we can use JavaScript destructuring. So I don't have to say slot props. I can just say I want the message property and then add message, and it is the same thing. But I can also use this with named slots. So let's say I want to name this description again, and I want to add a description attribute with my description variable that I'm about to write. And we're going to say const description equals what a fantastic description, more exclamation points. And I can run whatever I want in my script. I can run API calls, I can do computed variables, I can use functions, whatever. So this can be dynamic content that changes. So I go back to my slot and we're getting an error. That's not the error we should be getting, but we should be getting an error since we're trying to use vslot and named slots with templates. So this, we're going to go back to calling this default. And now this is still going to get the message property that we passed. And this template is going to be description. And it's going to get that description prop that we had passed. We're going to put in default. This is my example and our message in a p tag. And then we are going to also put a p tag around our description. And we're going to hit save, and we should get all of that in our component. So if you, like me, worked a lot in React and spent a lot of time building maps to make lists and do all this kind of stuff, guess what? Slots makes that super easy. You can create an extensible component, pass a list to it, and then pass the content from that list back through the slot and style that list however you want. Here's a quick example of a fancy list component that's super extensible. From props, we get an array of list items. In our template, we take that array and we iterate through it using v-for. And for each of those, we'll have a slot in our list element that takes the list item. It's bound to it as a property. It's got the name item, and like every v-for in Vue, you have to add a key. Go back to our component where we are calling this child component. We have our products array that we're passing to list items. In our template name item, we get name, description, and count properties for each item. And then we set up how we want to style it. We want to put it in a div. We want to give that a class name. We want the name to be in an H3. We want the description to be in a P, and we put the count in a span with a class. We'd be able to style that in our parent component and make it look exactly how we want. And since I have added no styling, it's not going to be styled, but look at that. Our array is displayed. Passing data around using slots is very cool and very extensible in Vue. Well, that is all I have got for Vue today. Hopefully you enjoyed learning a little bit more about slots.